Before I get started, I really want to share with you why I'm here today and why I founded this company. I founded this company having worked for many decades with private sector developers across Canada, some of Canada's best private sector developers, delivering over $2 billion in complex mixed-use real estate development. And what happened was that one of the developers I was working with started working in partnership with a First Nation. And I was wildly excited about the opportunity to enter into this partnership on the developer side to deliver a large-scale land development that I was leading for the developer, but now in partnership with a nation. And I learned two things through that experience. The first thing I learned was that the nation was taking on a lot of risk and a lot of courage in entering into this partnership with a developer to develop these lands. And the second thing that I learned in delivering that project was that there was not a level playing field for the nation in the relationship with the developer who I was working with to advance the project. I found going into meetings that I really wish that the nation had the expertise that I was bringing to the developer to deliver the project on their side of the table. So after working on this project for a number of years, I decided to quit that job and I decided to start this company, Purpose-Driven Development, so that I could bring my skills and expertise and rigor of private sector development, but working with nations who have land and the courage and the tenacity to undertake real estate and land development projects. So the values of my company are to bring trust and to bring transparency and expertise to the relationships that we enter into with the nations that we work with. So we're really excited to be here today to share with you some of our experience and some of our best practices for any of you in this room who are looking to undertake land development or housing development, or are currently in those relationships with a partner or investor, or maybe have a project that's been stuck and unable to advance successfully. So that's our why, and that's why we're here today. Land development, as we know, presents a really unprecedented and powerful opportunity for nations looking to advance their economic development. And we know that when land development is done well and when it's done thoughtfully, it has the potential to unlock not just wealth generation, but to unlock opportunities to preserve culture, to create assets for the nation, to build capacity for nations, to also revitalize community and community values, to look at things like building housing alongside economic development, and also to create infrastructure development. And we know that there are some nations out there that are doing this remarkably well. We heard from Chief Louis some of the amazing initiatives of the Osoyoos Indian Band, and I had the opportunity to present on land development with Chief Louis and Jeff a few weeks ago to really learn about what they've done and what they've done well. Another group that we really look to for best practices is the Musqueam Indian Band and what they've achieved on their Lalem project with the Musqueam Capital Corporation. We know there are nations out there that are doing this very well, and we learn from them and we build on their best practices and their successes in the work that we deliver. So if you have land and if you have dreams, we're your team. My background, as I said, is working in private sector real estate development for over 2 decades and delivering over $2 billion in complex real estate development across Canada's top markets. And this is my colleague, Tamara Pilato. I'd like to let her introduce herself.
So my name is Tamara Pilato, as my esteemed, our fearless leader, Carla, just mentioned. I too come from a background in the private sector, trained as an architect, and then worked for 8 years now delivering complex real estate as well. So I'm simply thrilled to be a part of the purpose-driven team, and I'm going to talk a bit more about who we are as a team. So what we'll cover today, as I mentioned, a bit of who we are. We'll talk about the problems we solve and what we can do, how we can work together through a case study series of some of our work to date. So as Carla mentioned, she founded Purpose-Driven Development, and we are a boutique firm, conscientious, experienced real estate development professionals. We all share a deep alignment to our company values with a mission to create successful, mixed income, mixed use developments and communities where everyone can thrive. We deeply believe in inclusive prosperity. And this is what has brought all of us from the private sector into this sphere of work. So here's our team. As you can see, our expertise ranges from all phases of development, construction, strategic planning, and finance, and we're further supported by our trusted team of advisors who are experts in their fields. Some of the clients we've worked with, including some of the nations that we've had the pleasure of working with to date. We also have done work with nonprofits, public sector institutions, and churches, some of which those projects will be highlighting in a moment in more detail. So our strengths and what really drives us at the beginning and end of the day is that development can be inherently complex and oftentimes risky, and we embrace those challenges and leverage our experience to simplify those complexities and manage that risk through all stages of a project from inception all the way through completion. This is all with the intent to unlock the potential of your land, and we really see ourselves not just as development managers and consultants, but your partners in this journey with a personal vested interest in your long-term health and prosperity of those communities. A little bit about our experience overall. As Carla mentioned, decades of experience. The team culminates into a team of professionals that have delivered on billions of dollars of complex real estate development. We currently have completed a pipeline of 2,200 homes and have secured millions of dollars in financing, which we'll talk a bit more about that as well. So I'm going to turn it back over to Carla to talk a bit more about what we do and how we make it happen.
Great, thank you. Before we get into what we do and what we can do for you in the case studies, I really want to get a sense in this room, how many of you either have completed or are undertaking a real estate or land development project within your community? So big hands so I can see. Big hands. Okay, so 40%? 40%. How many of you are contemplating a potential real estate or land development project in your next 5 years, let's say? Okay, great, thank you. So you know that these projects bring inherent complexity and risk with them, and it's our job to manage that complexity and risk for you through all stages, whether you're looking at acquiring a site, through the redevelopment process, the design process, through the construction process, including all of the financing in pre-development and in construction. Our company focuses on essentially taking that on, all of the chaos, simplifying the chaos, and delivering the project through all of those phases so that you don't have to lose sleep over it. And we do that in a way that looks at these projects comprehensively from a social perspective, from a community perspective, a cultural perspective, and an economic perspective. As we said earlier, these projects don't have to just be about long-term economic prosperity. They can include many of the other values that are of priority within your communities, and I'll speak to some examples of that. So the full service of spectrum of services we provide is shown here. So everything on the left side, we have a client right now that has 60 different sites and are very confused about what to do with those properties and which ones have development potential and which ones don't. So we undertake what's called a portfolio analysis, where we look really carefully at each one of those opportunities and we assess them against a set of criteria that we know creates optimal development projects. And then we also assess them against criteria that our clients give us about what their priorities are. And together, we can really clearly and strategically come up with, here are the optimal development opportunities from those 60 sites. Here's 5 for the next couple of years. Here's the next 5. Here's the next 5. So that's called portfolio analysis and planning. We also undertake large-scale land development projects where we undertake everything from what's possible on this land all the way to completion of construction, including securing financing at each stage as well. And there are some really exciting new opportunities that I'm going to speak to you about those financing opportunities that exist very recently. So in our projects, we really focus on ensuring that the projects that we deliver speak to the values of the communities and the clients that we work with. So you really get a sense of that in the design of the projects that you see here. They're not standard boxes that you see many projects getting completed look like. These projects, once they get designed and built, they're around for 50 and 60 years. So it's really important for us in the way we do our work that we do them right and they embody the values of the clients we work with. So a couple of projects we have currently, we are working with Snanawas Nation on the island. We're working on a large-scale 50-acre land development that has been designated for economic development. And we've been working with the nation, with Chief and Council, and with their members of their Economic Development Board to do the full land development project and the servicing and all aspects of delivering this project. This is a really significant project that will unlock very significant long-term financial prosperity for this nation, which has a very small number of land holdings. Another project that we've worked with the nation, this nation came to us on the island with a parcel of land that they were interested in developing for housing. And what we did is we stepped back and we said, could we have a look at your strategic plan? And in looking at the strategic plan, we found there were priorities in there related to cultural space. There were priorities in there related to economic development and Indigenous business space. There were priorities in there related to education and an early childhood education center. And so we brought all of those priorities together into this project. And we're able to develop an idea and a concept for this project that includes housing for nation members, that includes commercial space for Indigenous businesses, that generates long-term revenue for the nation, that includes an early childhood education center, and includes a space for cultural activities, all designed around a central healing garden, healing circle. Another project we currently have underway is it's called the South Winds Project. It's in Vancouver, and it's at Cambion Marine. This is a very significant 2-acre site near a transit corridor in the city of Vancouver. And this project is going to be delivering 700 units of mixed market and rental housing, as well as significant community serving commercial and retail space and amenities as well. This project is under construction right now. This is also a project we're delivering with a nonprofit in the city of Vancouver near Cambion 13th. And it's providing 135 market rental and affordable homes that are intergenerational. They're targeting seniors and low-income families. And this project, this client had land, and their land was valued at about $9 million. And with that land and our relationships and our expertise, we've unlocked $85 million in financing and funding to deliver this project to construction. And here it is today in construction. Another completed project of ours is this Prescott mixed-use development. This is a project that is a head office for Blue Shore Financial in North Vancouver, along with retail space at the bottom of the project, community serving retail, and 85 homes. And in terms of larger scale development and expertise, we have a lot of this experience as it relates to these large scale complex projects. So this is a project in the city of Toronto, and it was 80 acres of former brownfield land on the waterfront in Toronto that sat vacant and derelict for decades. Nobody had the expertise or know-how to advance this project. Private sector tried for a number of decades and failed, and public sector failed. And so I had the opportunity to work on this project with an organization called Waterfront Toronto. And this project is now about 75% built out. It has a mix of market housing, 25% affordable housing, and 25 acres of parks and public space woven throughout this new neighborhood, as well as schools, community centers, a lot of commercial space as well. And it was built as the athletes' village for the Pan Am Games in 2015. So it's not completely built, but a very significant part of it is built into a brand new, complete neighborhood. And within that project, I had the opportunity to work with an urban Indigenous organization called Miswee And these projects take a very long time to build out. So this project is actually under construction right now, but it is one of the first kind of integrated Indigenous health centers for sure in Ontario and in Eastern Ontario as well. There's a really, really interesting Indigenous integrated health center with many different services for urban Indigenous folks there. So those are our current projects. We want to walk you through a bit of what we can do for you. How do our service support you? And in doing that, I want to share with you some really key best practices for any of you who are undertaking land development or contemplating undertaking a land development project. So we have 4 best practices, just 4, that if we could share anything and have you walk away from this session today, that you remember these 4 things. So in terms of the how of what we do and why we do it with success and deliver results, is that real estate development, for those who don't do it every day, can feel really overwhelming. It can feel stressful. It's a high-risk undertaking, and it's very murky. It's confusing, and it's complicated. And one of the things that was really important to me in starting this company and working with groups who don't do development every day was to try to level the playing field a little bit. And to do that, we tried to take the murkiness and lack of transparency in real estate development and try to make it clear so people could understand. So we created this framework, and our company has a ton of confidence and have seen this framework achieve really significant things, and we'll talk to you about those in a minute. But this framework is essentially outlining with a lot of clarity that there are 8 pillars that are the foundation of any successful real estate development project. And we take our 40 years of experience to come up with this framework, so we have a ton of trust and confidence in it. And I'm not going to spend time with this today, but I just want to tell you the power of this framework. First of all, it helps level the playing field because it makes everyone aware of and understand all the areas of opportunity and all the areas of risk when you're undertaking a project. Second of all, it's a tool that we use to manage projects successfully to ensure that we're moving them forward with success. Also, it helps us manage risk because if a project goes sideways or fails or gets stuck, we literally can use this as a diagnostic tool and say, oh yeah, it's because you didn't do these parts of these pillars weren't undertaken accurately or enough or correctly. And then finally, it's a great tool to build capacity with our clients when they understand these pillars. So the first best practice that I would like to share with you is that it is essential for you undertaking a project that you have a trusted and experienced group of professionals that can work with you with a comprehensive approach to successful land development. So one of the ways we do that is with this 8-pillar framework we just talked to you about. And I want to tell you some of the results that we've achieved with this, at least one of the results. We were hired by the City of Mission, who have a 300-acre parcel of land on their waterfront. This parcel of land has contamination issues, it has servicing issues, and it has 80 different landowners, 80. And so the City of Mission had spent 40 years, and hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to advance this project. And they kept failing multiple times. And I was actually on a stage speaking about land development, and they hired our company to come help them. And I'm really proud to say that in working with this client and this project, in only 2 years, this project has advanced further in 2 years with this approach that we were talking about here than it has in 40 years. And in fact, there's some images of where the project is and what it's going to be once it's built out. But our client, the City of Mission, was actually invited to present at an international conference in France a few weeks ago. And this project was identified as Canada's most outstanding investment opportunity in 2023. So when we say ensure that you have an experienced team that is trusted on your side when it comes to land development, this is what the kind of results are of ensuring you're making good decisions on that front. The second best practice I want to share with you, and this one's really exciting because part of the solution here is in the room with us today, is that you must establish the financing and funding strategy for your real estate or land development project early in the process. And you must build those key relationships with the lenders and the funders early. And we're so excited about this because we know in the work we've been doing that the financing is out there, but you often need a certain amount of equity aside from the land to access the funding. So you need the cash to access the financing to build your development project. What's wildly exciting is that the First Nations Bank of Canada, together with the Canada Infrastructure Bank, have formed a partnership, like as of weeks ago, very, very recently, that provide 100% financing for nations who are undertaking land development projects. This hasn't existed before. And what's happened in the past is for nations who have wanted to undertake land development, they have had to enter into a partnership with an investor or a developer who brings that 20% equity so they can access the financing. And the long-term result of that is they're sharing the equity, they're sharing the revenues from the project. That situation has changed dramatically in the last few months with this partnership that's been announced. So this means that nations who want to undertake land development or any real estate development, maybe it's housing, market housing, nation member housing, nations can access the full 100% of the financing and not give away their equity or not enter into a partnership where that equity has to be shared. And this is game-changing in Canada. So we work with these groups, we work with these lenders, we work with Canada Infrastructure Bank and First Nations Bank of Canada, and we work with all of the government and lenders who provide financing to nations to build housing or to develop their land. We have these relationships and we work with them. So it's really critical that you establish this financing strategy and develop those relationships early. So the result is this project as an example. We've been working with this client for a number of years to build this mixed income housing project that is market rental and affordable rental Again, the group had a $9 million parcel of land, and we leveraged the land to secure $85 million in financing, and that's $20 million in grants, because the affordable housing component gets a lot of grants, and then $65 million in financing. And what I'll say about this is this opportunity is available for nations who have land now. The third best practice that I want to share with you is that land development can can generate tangible benefits for the community. We've been involved in some projects with groups who want to do land development for economic development purposes only, and we think that is critical and that is the driver. But what we want to say is that oftentimes these projects can create benefits beyond just bringing in revenue and creating that long-term economic prosperity. And I think, Chief Louis speaks about this, about all of the benefits for the community that get unlocked with projects that can thoughtfully bring in, the values that the nation has around housing, or around cultural space, around education. Those can all get woven into a project if they're brought in early, at the early stages. And this project, I think, was a great example of that. I've spoken to it, but the idea is, we were brought in for one specific thing on this project, yet we were able to look at housing and cultural space and an early childhood education center and commercial space for long-term revenue generation, all within the same project. So it's this idea of creating a complete community. Land is scarce, and these projects are incredibly intensive in terms of time and energy and money. So you really want to unlock the full potential of your land and look at all of the benefits that these projects can generate for your communities, and be bold in your vision. The final best practice I want to speak to you about is that it is really important, and I say this coming from the developer side of working with nations. It is really important to build the necessary capacity within your side of the table if you are in a partnership when it comes to real estate development. And this is either if you're with a partner, an investor partner, or a developer partner, or if you're doing the project on your own, you still need that capacity in land development. You still need your owner's representative. It's really critical. So we call this leveling the playing field, and I know I've mentioned it already once, but with or without partners, an owner's rep with strong development expertise will represent your interests in every decision. In every meeting, your interests are at the forefront. And without it, you kind of don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're missing. It also is really critical to ensure that the nation's interests are optimized in whatever deal structures, in whatever partnerships, in whatever decisions are made at every meeting. Really critical. And partnerships with developers and investors, if that is something you're wanting to do, there is benefits and there's great examples out there, but it also can be a very big risk area, right? It can be a very big risk area. So we're sharing this with you so that you can mitigate that risk. And so this project is another great example of that, where we were hired to lead the land development, but within that relationship, we also were representing the nation in discussions on land they wanted to acquire from an adjacent landowner. So we're there representing their interest as the developer with another landowner. We also, are able to explore partnerships with lenders and secure financing when we're involved in these relationships with our clients. And we're also in this project negotiating potential partnerships with investors and developers that are interested in the project, but with the nation's interest and only the nation's interest at the forefront of those discussions. So the result here is that the nation has a viable land development that will generate and unlock long-term revenue for them. And it's driven by their priorities and interests, and that the risks are also being mitigated at every step of this project for the nation and we're building capacity for the nation in all of those areas, all of those 8 areas of real estate development, so that they can take that into their next project and be successful and be more bold in their vision and what they want to do. So with that, the only closing remark I would like to leave with you is that we are deeply committed to being your trusted partner and bringing transparency to our work with you, and being your partner on the journey to realize the full potential of your land. Our work is really about building and also learning from the amazing work already being done by some of the leading nations out there doing land development and succeeding in real estate development. And I'd just like to acknowledge the 2 that we look to and learn from the most in what they've done. The ones we have great relationships with and are really learning from and building on their success are the Osoyoos Indian Band and Chief Louie. What an amazing leader he is. And certainly the Musqueam Indian Band and what they've achieved with their Musqueam Capital Corporation and the Lalem development. And if you haven't seen or looked into the Lalem development, we'd really recommend you do that. All of these best practices we're talking about are built into how they delivered that project as well. So thank you very much.